Does your piano playing sound amateur? Is it lacking that professional quality? I'm sure lots of you have seen this exact situation play out where someone sits down at the piano and plays something legitimately hard, but they play it somewhat like this. Then someone else sits down and plays something seemingly easy like this. And you can tell that one person's a professional and the other person is an amateur. So if you fall a little more to the first camp, into the amateur sound quality category, this video is literally for you. I'm going to focus on two main areas that'll make your sound go from a little more amateur, a little more beginner, to a more professional sound. I'm going to start off here with what I think is the less talked about element of a professional sound, and that is sound, as in volume, as in actually sound being produced. Now, I know lots of you are thinking, oh, I got to skip this one because it's a dumb category, but I see this as often the major category. This is such a big deal. The other one's really important too. We'll get to that in a second. But often what I see people do is they're trying to mimic this beautiful sound. They just play really quietly like this. And a couple things happen. First of all, your notes don't get to speak. The hammers have to literally fly up and hit the strings. Like there has to be this flying up, striking the strings. If you're playing so quiet, you're like tossing those hammers in the air, hoping they kind of make enough contact to get a quiet sound. But the even bigger thing is when you're playing both hands as quietly as you can, is you have no balance. If you're just both hands trying to go as quietly as you can, there's no tone. There's no like, oh, I hear this as being louder than this. So my first encouragement is just take whatever the melody is, especially if you're playing a slow piece, whatever the melody is, play it louder than you think. Someone used to tell me, my old teacher used to tell me that any melody worth playing is worth playing at least mezzo forte. Obviously, it's a generalization. You can't apply that to everything in the world, but it's not a bad place to start. If you're playing a melody as quietly as you can, especially a melody like this, it's going to get buried. What you want to do is start off with just assume a good, nice, full, rich sound like this. Now you notice my left hand is still pretty quiet. So what I'm not doing is just pounding every single note as hard as I can like this. That would obviously be bad, but I'm making sure my melody is probably at least mezzo forte, maybe even forte-ish. Now, the other big factor in this is that once you have enough sound, now you can be musical and get louder and get softer. If you start off playing as quietly as you can, you have no wiggle room for expression. You can't get louder or softer. But if you give yourself something to work with like this, no one's going to care if you start off with a nice, full, beautiful sound, as long as you have some balance between the hands. As long as both hands aren't going, that's bad, that's good. I'm sure some of you are thinking, I agree with you, Ryan. How do I do that? It's really hard. One really good exercise you can work on is something like this. Have your left hand do something like this really calmly back and forth, just back and forth like this, and have your right hand then drop, kind of exaggerate on notes like, and my right hand to generate sound is giving more weight dropping down like this. You could speed it up if you felt more confident with it like this. Before I get to the next one, just want to mention real quick that I've recently launched a Patreon page. If you've been enjoying these videos, enjoying hanging out with Ryan, learning some stuff on the piano, consider going over there, supporting the channel, kind of supporting the growth of it, making this more maybe into a job as we go forward, but also seeing some fun behind the scenes stuff, some bonus learning material. Recently launched, so not a lot of stuff's on there yet, but we're going to be building. If you're watching us from the future, a few months from now, there might be like 10 million people over there, and you're like the last one to join. But anyways, let's get back to the video. And now for the second big category, rhythm. But I do not mean learning how to count and learning that eighth notes are double the speed as quarter notes and 16th notes are 4 times quarter notes. Most of you probably know that, especially if you're playing like the example I gave at the beginning of the piece. You probably already know, oopsie, that one. You probably already know that, okay, 16th notes should be, half as slow as 32nd notes, but 8 times faster than half notes. You probably know lots of that stuff. The thing that really is missing from a more amateur sound is a really, really strong sense of pulse. So by pulse, I'm meaning something more than just knowing how the subdivisions work. So you could do something like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 and. I technically did make my triplets faster than my eighth notes and my 16th notes faster than my eighth notes, but my pulse, the big beat, the quarter notes, was not consistent. My pulse was going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 and 2, and that, it seems obvious, but I see this as like rampant across players. Okay, so I know pulse, rhythm, counting is sounding very vague. So I'm just going to give you some examples, and I think it'll make a lot of sense. So the same piece I was playing earlier, if I did something like this, 2 E and E, and this is bad, by the way. 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 2 E and 1 E and 2 E and E and 2. My point of doing all that is to show you, if you were to take any single beat I just now did, it wasn't that atrocious. I don't know for sure. It's hard to play wrong in the right way, if that makes any sense at all. But no single beat was horrible. But the large scale, like my rhythm, was not steady. What you need to train yourself to do, and this isn't just like a 2-minute fix thing, this is like a work on it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you kind of instill this in you, is to feel a much bigger beat. So in this piece, what I need to be feeling is not the E and you're trying to do every single little thing and trying to guess how fast the da 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 speeds up to there. You need to zoom it out. So I'm going back to where I was earlier and try to just feel a really big quarter note like this. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, when you're learning a piece, you often have to feel it at the smaller subdivisions. You don't often have a choice, especially if it's a challenging piece for you. You kind of have to start off at that level because you're trying to count the E and does, or however you learned how to count. You're trying to feel all the subdivisions. But if you don't eventually try to zoom out and feel the bigger beat, you often kind of lose sight of the big picture. So the example I gave at the very beginning of the video, I had basically no sound production like that. And also I was not staying consistent with the bigger beat when I went from subdivision to subdivision. I had something like... The rhythm is shifting, it's going faster, it's going slower. All the rhythm is shifting, going faster and slower. And again, I just don't have good sound production. I'm not going. I'm going. Hope that makes some degree of sense, and all you can work on this and your sounds will start to become so much more professional over the next few months here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.